Mau numpang tanya, sebelumnya mengingatkan nanti ketika Pak Menteri dan rombongannya bersama Bapak Rektor kita masuk, seperti biasa kita akan diminta untuk berdiri. Nah, yang saya mau nanya nih, kita mau tepuk tangan apa enggak? Mau tepuk tangan? Tapi tidak akan diumumkan, ayo tepuk tangan gitu, enggak. Mau tepuk tangan enggak? Harus sepakat nih ketika beliau masuk. Boleh? Oke, berarti berdiri dan begitu delegasi Pak Menteri dan Bapak Rektor kita masuk, kita tepuk tangan dan juga ketika keluar ya, ketika meninggalkan ruangan. Oke, kita sepakat ya? Oke, makasih. Announcement terakhir sebelum mulai, dicek lagi HP-nya sudah mati atau belum. No photos, Kemudian tamu terhormat kita sudah sampai di Bappenas, jadi sebentar lagi sampai di sini, tapi kira-kira 10 sampai 15 menit akan diterima dulu oleh para dekan. Jadi setelah sekitar 9.45 beliau akan memasuki ruangan. Oke? Dan kita akan tutup pintu. Jadi tuan rumah yang elegan. Terima kasih ya.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ladies and gentlemen, please rise to welcome our guest of honor, His Excellency, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Gary Locke. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Good morning. A warm welcome to His Excellency, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Gary Locke, His Excellency, the U.S. Ambassador to Indonesia, Mr. Cameron Hume, Director of Universitas Indonesia, Professor Dr. Dersos Gumilar Rusliwa Somantri, the Dean of Faculty of Engineering, Professor Dr. Bambang Sugiarto, Master of Engineering, the Dean of Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science, Dr. Adi Basukriyadi, PhD, Director of Interdisciplinary Graduate Studies, representing the Director, Professor Dr. Chandra Wijaya. Welcome, lecturers and students of Faculty of Engineering, Universitas Indonesia. Welcome to the Hall of Senate, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia. To begin, let us welcome the Rector of Universitas Indonesia, Professor Dr. Dersos Gumilar Rusliwa Somantri, to the podium for a welcoming remark.
His Excellency, U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Gary F. Locke. Honorable the delegates of U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Trade Development Agency, Overseas Private Investment Corporation, Export-Import Bank of the U.S., His Excellency, U.S. Ambassador to Indonesia, Mr. Cameron Hume, their colleagues, my beloved students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to once again welcome you all in one of our campuses, namely campus UI Salemba. Ladies and gentlemen, the discussion today by Secretary Locke will be a very important discussion in terms of everybody here is part of the people who have, let's say, shared awareness on the shared problems of today, namely the sustainability of civilization is very important topic for all of people across the globe, especially challenging the responsibility and the active participation of the student, the intellectuals, and everybody across the globe. The earth of today now be inhabited by about 6.5 billion of people. This is really huge number. This impact to so many problems, including the energy shortage. There is a kind of dependency of the human civilization to fossil energy. Everybody now, every countries, every nation, moving into more, let's say, and to find also the solution of the future of energy. Renewable energy is a very, let's say, topic of everybody to be further developed as the solution for the human civilization to find a new source of energy. Please do not hesitate to discuss to us the view. I do believe that Secretary Locke will, let's say, enjoy the discussion with you, my beloved student, and do not hesitate again to ask and to, let's say, get a kind of enlightenment from him, the view, the global view, how we are dealing with the future energy challenge. Welcome again to everybody, especially Secretary Locke and also the other delegates and distinguished guests. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sumantri. Now please welcome Tantia Dian Permata Indah, who is outstanding student for 2010, who will be providing the students' view on clean energy. Tantia?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I, Tantia Dian Permata Indah, would like to welcome all of you to this wonderful day and also to health given to all of us. And I also would like to welcome all of you to this wonderful occasion, the visit of Secretary Locke from the United States of America. On behalf of the University of Indonesia, I would like to share my perspective on the environment and energy development in Indonesia before Secretary Locke delivers his remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, the Indonesian economy has been rising so rapidly in these last decades and thus has a very great impact on the energy sector. Energy demand, in particular electric power and transportation, will increase in line with regional economic development and population growth. With regard to the transportation, this sector is having the highest fuel consumption at around 48% nationally. The demand of this sector will certainly increase throughout the years, and thus it brings us into the challenge of achieving 3S of energy goals, which are first, security of supply, sustainability by solving global environmental problems, and stability of the market. In order to mitigate the possible effect of the rapid increase of the energy consumption, Indonesia is committed to the clean development mechanisms. Clean development mechanism itself is one of the mechanisms of the Kyoto Protocol. And it allows developing countries to sell emissions reduction from various projects to developed countries. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is the time to create awareness of the importance of the implementations of the clean energy itself. I myself already attend a regional conference in Singapore about clean energy, and it is indeed really inspiring to see how all developed countries and also major national, multinational companies race in the full speed to discover the clean energy resources. But it left a single question on me, on how clean energy will be effectively implemented in developing countries like Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, and thus I consider the importance of clean energy to the better future of Indonesia. It is really an honor for me to welcome Mr. Locke as the Secretary of Commerce of the United States of America to present his professional point of view about the clean energy. And I truly encourage all of you as a student of the University of Indonesia to fully participate in this discussion. And I suggest you to not feel any hesitate at all to raise your question in the end of session. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me to welcome Secretary Locke from the United States of America.
Thank you very much, Tantia Dian, for the introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here at this great university, the University of Indonesia. I want to thank you to the faculty and the staff and the administration for hosting this and for everyone joining us today. And I want to particularly thank Rector Gumilar Rusliwa Somantri for your kind words and your hospitality, and Professor Bambam Sugiarto and Dr. Ratna for visiting with us earlier today. And it's really a pleasure to be here at this very historic and beautiful and prestigious university, a university that has a rich history of academic excellence, and it has produced some hundreds of thousands of alumni whose influence is felt across many disciplines and all around the globe. Indeed, your influence is global, as it has cooperative programs with many foreign universities and a strong commitment to seeking solutions to so many of the challenges facing our entire globe. And today I'd like to talk about one of the biggest of those challenges. A few years ago, the late Nobel Prize-winning scientist Richard Smalley began giving lectures around the world identifying the top 10 global issues of the next 50 years. And Dr. Smalley highlighted issues of access to water, food, education, problems of poverty, overpopulation, terrorism, and disease, and of course the quest for democracy. But there was one issue that he believed overrode and superseded all the others: energy. Energy. And Dr. Smalley said, quote, "If you imagined a world where the energy problem was solved, you would find at least 5 of the 9 remaining problems on the list with a path to a reasonable answer." And he said, "In the absence of solving the energy problem, it is not clear there is an acceptable answer at all to the others." So what exactly is our energy problem? To begin with, we need more of it, a lot more. By mid-century, by 2050, global energy use is going to double. And to meet that doubling demand, we're going to have to turn on turn on some 2 new 1,000 megawatt power plants every single week for the next 30 years. We're not looking for any old kind of energy. The new energy has to be clean to avoid catastrophic climate change. And it's got to be affordable so that our economies can grow. Meanwhile, we'll need to do more than just find massive quantities of energy in the next few decades. We're going to need to rebuild and reinvent virtually every industrial activity, from transportation to manufacturing, construction, to be more energy efficient and economical with drastically reduced carbon output. And when you look at it in these terms, it's clear that the rapid deployment of clean energy and energy efficiencies is the most important and the most challenging, the most daunting challenge that we face in the world today. It's also one of our biggest opportunities, because the development of the clean energy and energy efficient technologies that we need to curb greenhouse gas emissions could help put millions of people in both of our countries and all around the world to work in good paying, high-skilled jobs. Worldwide energy is a $6 trillion market, and the fastest growing sector is the cleaner, greener kind. And the potential for new businesses and job creation is simply enormous. And that's why this week we've come to Indonesia with 10 U.S. companies that represent the best of what America has to offer in the area of clean energy, energy efficiency, electricity transmission, storage, and distribution. And both Indonesia and the United States can benefit from cooperation on clean energy development. Currently, renewable energy provides roughly 7% of Indonesia's energy, most of it coming from hydropower and geothermal. But the Indonesian government now has a pledge to more than double that by the year 2025. And the U.S. companies that are with us on this trade mission already possess cutting-edge technologies that can help Indonesia meet these very ambitious energy goals, while also spurring the creation of new jobs here in Indonesia as well as the United States. But it's also important to remember that many of the technologies needed to successfully cope with climate change and carbon reduction simply don't exist yet. It could be next-generation biofuels. It could be modular nuclear reactors or electric cars charged by a smart grid that completely changes the way that the world uses electricity, where you can actually sell electricity back into the grid from your electric automobiles, or you buy electricity from the grid at certain times of the day when it's the cheapest to use electricity, when there's too much electricity in the system. It could be all of it. It could be all of these ideas. Or it could be an innovation that no one has even thought of yet. And that's where you, the students and the scientists of the University of Indonesia, come in. The United States, Indonesia, and the entire world are counting on bright, motivated people like you to discover these new energy technologies. And although our energy problems are daunting, they do have solutions. And many of them can be solved with the science and the engineering skills that you're learning right here at the University of Indonesia. The budding blooms in the University of Indonesia symbol are said to be precursors of a new branch of science to develop, to meet the needs of a new age. And with your talent, your creativity, your ingenuity, you can be leaders. You can be leaders in the effort to combat climate change. And certainly the university's Green Campus initiative, with its focus on global warming, can be an important catalyst for action. You can be the innovators and the entrepreneurs that help us build a 21st century clean energy economy. It's my sincere hope that all of you will seize that opportunity. So with that, I know that many of you have a lot of questions, and so we'd like to get this discussion going and be more than happy to answer whatever questions you might have. So with that, let's start with questions. All right, great. Thank you very much. Anybody with a question? Questions, anybody? Let's see one. All right, yes. Go ahead. Oh, you have a microphone?
Okay. Good morning, Mr. I'm Dinda from Chemical Engineering University of Indonesia. I want to ask two questions. First, does the clean energy project that U.S. bring to Indonesia is applicable for condition in Indonesia? As we know that Indonesia is a developed country which has different thinking, and sometimes we have a good concept and we are not too good to implement the concept like this clean energy project. Maybe it can be a trouble for us to implement this clean energy project. And the second is, you also say that this clean energy is coordinates with 24 companies, U.S. American. Yes. How far the 24 companies role in this project? I mean the portion. Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Well, first of all, on clean energy, there are so many different solutions to clean energy. And it could be, for instance, energy efficiency. It's estimated by the McKinsey company, a consulting firm, that we can achieve and meet 50% of all the future energy needs of the world simply by using more efficiently the energy we have now. So a lot of factories use old motors that use a lot of electricity. If we can use motors that are more efficient, those companies and factories don't have to use as much electricity, which means there's more electricity available for the people in the rural areas. A lot of people in the rural areas are poor and they have very small refrigerators or no refrigerators. So as they start to buy bigger refrigerators, you need more electricity. United States actually had a program several decades ago, that required all refrigerators to be more energy efficient. So they didn't use as much electricity, so there's more electricity available for everyone else. Because every time you build a new power plant, whether it's coal-fired, hydro, geothermal, that's very expensive. And someone has to pay for that. Usually it's the people through the utility rates, or the government has to pay for it. If the government pays for it, that's money that could be used to support your colleges and universities, all right? So, you put the money into power plants, that's money that you could use someplace else. So if we can have all appliances much more energy efficient, including refrigerators, then you don't have to build as many new power plants. And the power plants that you do build will supply electricity for all the new people coming into this world. So that's one of the things that we need to focus on. New types of energy instead of using fossil fuels, so we reduce our greenhouse gases, because if we keep doing what we're doing now, the greenhouse gases that are produced will cause the oceans to rise. And here in Indonesia, with thousands of islands, if the oceans rise, many of those islands will be underwater. And that's not going to be good for people or businesses or economy. And so that's the challenge that we have. How to produce more energy without ruining the planet. And number two, we can solve some of the needs for energy by being much more energy efficient. We have a lot of companies some of the 10 companies, or the 10 companies that are on this mission, have different expertise, from developing geothermal to being more energy efficient, to providing technology. Or even, for instance, one of the companies is GE that make locomotives. The more that we are able to move freight and goods on the rail lines instead of on the highways, we're going to be much more efficient. And using the most advanced diesel locomotives will actually save energy. So those are just some of the projects and the examples that we have and the expertise of our companies. Another question? Another question? Yes.
Sir, my name is Diana from University of Indonesia. I believe that nuclear reactor is one of the renewable energy sources that can supply large amounts of energy. But here in Indonesia, there has been some refusal of the usage of nuclear reactor due to the radiation. So what solutions can you offer, and how can you improve this kind of situation? Thank you.
Well, there's for instance, President Obama very much wants the United States government policy to re-examine nuclear energy, and he now supports more use of nuclear energy and building more nuclear reactors. But when we do that, we have to make sure it's safe. All right, that has to be paramount, safety of the nuclear power plants. And what do we do with the waste that's generated? We need to solve that issue as well. And we need to make sure that all the development and work on nuclear power does not end up being used by terrorists that could harm all the peace-loving people around the world. Enormous challenges of technology, environment, and security. But I really believe that we still need to move forward on that. And Europe has a long history of small nuclear power plants that seem to be technologically safe and also that address these other issues. So we're going to have to keep working on it, but it will have to be part of the answer to providing more, generating more electricity without polluting or causing climate change. Any other questions or comments? No, this works. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Hafid from Chemical Engineering, University of Indonesia. I want to ask you, sir, about if Indonesia and America will collaborate in developing project clean of energy. How and what form of cooperation that will be able to benefit from such cooperation, both for Indonesia and US, in developing some clean energy project?
If I understand the question is how can the people of Indonesia and Asia benefit from energy cooperation with the United States? Yes. Okay. Well, for instance, remember I was talking about the GE locomotive engine that we produce in the United States. It's made in the United States, but if we sell a GE locomotive to your railroads, that is such a large piece of equipment and very heavy. So actually we send it almost like in boxes, all right? We actually ship it over to Indonesia, for instance, or another country, and then it's assembled here. So that creates jobs for the people of your country, and that's what these partnerships are all about. doing some of the work in Indonesia, doing some of the work in the United States, creating jobs in America, creating jobs for the people of Indonesia. And when U.S. companies invest in clean energy projects, they hire local people, they train the local people. They oftentimes, our U.S. companies have great corporate social responsibility programs where they donate money to the community and provide money for scholarships, provide scholarships for the children of their employees to go to colleges and universities, so that benefits the people of Indonesia. They'll also help train a group of people to be in management, and a lot of these employees of a U.S. company eventually start their own company and become entrepreneurs, and that also stimulates and grows the economy of your country as well. So we think that these partnerships have great benefits, and we seek mutually beneficial partners. We want to, our U.S. companies want to go to another country where we can help the government and the people achieve their objectives of a better lifestyle, higher quality of life, job creation, and, for instance, in energy, meeting your ambitious energy goals of reducing carbon emissions and becoming more energy independent. We live in the planet, and greenhouse gas emissions are not going to be restricted to just one country. The production of greenhouse gases will hurt the environment for everyone on the entire planet. So we all have a stake and must work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We now take a question from the internet. Yeah.
A question from Twitter here from Audrey Ganteng. She asks, what incentives are given for corporations or organizations that put an effort into developing or using clean energy?
Well, we don't actually have any government incentives in the United States to help our companies go around the world. But the United States does have policies right now to encourage more research and development on clean energy, more manufacturing of, for instance, advanced batteries, tax incentives for companies to get into and start producing manufacturing, whether it's solar or wind turbines and things like that. And that will benefit people all around the world. So we're really trying to develop our own industries on clean energy, renewable energy, and energy efficiency technologies. But so that as our companies get more sophisticated, they can then share their technology with people all around the world. Another question. Another question? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, sir. My name is Mutia from University of Indonesia. Actually, I'm interested with the good implementation of clean energy in USA. I want to ask about what is the correlation line between the government, private company, and also citizens in USA in order to make the good implementation of the clean energy concept in USA. Then what kind of participations from each sectors in order to make the good implementation? Thank you.
Well, first of all, we need to develop an energy policy in the United States, and we're a little bit slow in doing that. But President Obama is very much committed to drastically reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and helping with the development of a clean energy sector. And President Obama has done more for clean energy than any president in U.S. history. And under his administration, some $80 billion in U.S. funds for R&D in clean energy, incentives for production of next-generation automobile batteries for electric cars, to manufacturing in clean energy. He also, let me see, I had one thought there. We also need to make sure that we need to pass an energy bill in the United States so that we provide incentives for the private sector to do additional work. It cannot all be government. And it really has to be much of the work done by the private sector. The United States government can provide these incentives. At the same time, we're trying to set these energy reduction goals that everyone will meet. And states and local governments are also setting requirements so that as they produce electricity in their states or their communities, they are also focusing on renewable energy and reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. So everybody has a role to play, both at the local government level, the national government level, as well as private sector. That's our focus. Yes?
My name is Ismail from Chemical Engineering Faculty. Is there any difference between Obama's policy and Bush policy in clean energy, and what are the impacts to the Indonesia?
Well, there's a big difference between the policies of the Bush administration and the Obama administration. First of all, the President Obama very much believes that in the science that our fossil fuels are causing climate change, that climate change is occurring, and that we need to move aggressively. Otherwise, the planet will face irretrievable, irreversible impacts from climate change, like rising oceans, more droughts, more flooding, just a whole change of our weather pattern. And that's going to have major costs and impact and disruptions to economies all around the world, to growing of food, to flooding, to the health of the people. So this President Obama, differs dramatically from the prior administration. And this president is doing more to try and stop and fight climate change in the United States than any other president in U.S. history. But we cannot solve it alone. And we know that, for instance, America has the biggest per capita generation of greenhouse gases of any country in the world. And we have a responsibility to help lead and work with other countries to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to become more energy independent. So there's a big difference in philosophy as well as approach.
Okay, thank you. My name is Anissa from Chemical Engineering University of Indonesia. Well, ask you about, I think clean energy is related to the geothermal energy resources. And as we know, Indonesia has 50% of the world geothermal energy resources. But some companies said that this source of energy is not economical for the company because the cost of production is too expensive. What the solution will you offer to this problem, and how to enhance the company or the investor to develop this source of energy, especially in Indonesia, sir? Thank you.
All right. Well, certainly Indonesia has perhaps the world's largest reserves of geothermal. And the challenge is, how do you deploy that? Because I think you're only using a very small percentage of that potential geothermal right now in the development or generation of your electricity. Your renewable energy or non-fossil fuel energy right now is comprised of makes up only 7% of all the power that you generate. So you're relying a lot on coal and oil and natural gas. That's why we need to have policies and governments all around the world focusing on R&D, research and development, to drive down the cost of the development of geothermal. Whether it's your own government providing incentives for private companies in Indonesia to do it, or the United States government having policies, or Europe having policies, the more R&D on geothermal. And once we develop those technologies, then we can share it. And of course, as I said earlier, we've got to figure out ways to make sure that the renewable energy of the future is affordable. We may have the technology to do it, but if it's so expensive, who's going to use it? And other countries will continue to generate electricity using oil or natural gas or dirty coal because all the other technologies are too expensive. That's why we need to work with the private sector. That's why we have to have policies that encourage the private sector and government scientists and researchers to continue developing those technologies and always trying to drive down the cost. But if we set the targets, then I believe the engineers and the scientists will respond. Back in the United States many years ago, there was a big debate on setting standards on the efficiency of refrigerators. And a lot of the politicians and a lot of the company executives said that couldn't be done. But California, for instance, actually did set a standard for efficiency in refrigerators. And once the debate was over, the scientists got to work, and they did it. They have actually made the energy efficiency of modern refrigerators much better, and the cost of refrigerators have actually gone down over time. And so it can be done. It can be done. Another question from the internet.
We have a question here from Gilang on Twitter. He wants to know what the potential of Indonesia is as a producer of renewable energy, how long it will take, and he says it seems like a mission impossible to me.
Well, that's up to you and up to the students here and the faculty here at the University of Indonesia with your great research and your great minds. How much do you care about climate change? And how much do you care about developing new sources of energy which will help you avoid catastrophic climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, as well as creating a lot of new jobs for the people of Indonesia? Clearly, renewable energy, there's great potential. Solar, because of all the sunlight that you have. Also, hydropower, and with all the water. You know, a lot of electricity can be generated by the currents and the tidal actions and the power of the waves and of the currents in the water, as well as opportunities for wind power. And so you have a whole host of opportunities here, and with the climate, the topography, the land that you have, great opportunities for demonstration and R&D to constantly perfect, improve the technology, and drive down the cost. Another question. Let me see. Yes, over there.
Okay, sorry.
It's on.
Yeah. My name is Teguh from Accounting Faculty of Economics. So far, we have talked about the positive impact of the using of clean energy. Okay, but I believe that a policy will have a positive impact and as well as a negative impact. What kind of negative impact do you think will face by Indonesia if we implement clean energy here? For example, in the using of biofuel, there will have some impact in the using of area. Some area will convert from like the food-based plant to the palm-based plant that have a bad impact to some area around there. Do you think what kind of policy can we do to mitigate that kind of impact? Thank you.
That's a great question. How do we make sure that as we develop clean energy that there are not negative or detrimental effects, and how do we make sure that we're only pursuing those technologies and clean energy policies that have beneficial impact? I mean, you're right, even in the United States, as we try to develop ethanol to replace petroleum or as an additive for petroleum, it was based on food products that actually drove up the cost of food. And some people said that development of ethanol using certain types of food crops was actually more harmful to the environment when you look at the entire cost of using energy to develop that fuel source. But that's why we need to keep looking at these policies. We need to think this all the way through and also look at other technologies and be open, whether it's algae, whether it's food waste, not using food crops, but using food waste to develop energy, or even garbage. You know, taking the garbage that's now buried into the ground and using that to develop energy, or even taking the gases that come out of the ground from the landfills and producing energy. So we need to think about that whole equation. And then, of course, sometimes the manufacturing of some of the new technology uses a lot of electricity or energy. That's why we have to constantly look at more efficient production methods so that we're constantly reducing the amount of energy it takes to make some of these alternative energy sources. Question. Yeah.
Hi, sir. My name is India. I'm from Chemical Engineering University of Indonesia. I want to ask you about, like you said before about the garbage and rubbish. I mean, one of our big problem in this country is about waste treatment. I mean, maybe would you mind to share your thoughts maybe for this country to overcome that kind of problems? Thank you.
Well, actually, I think it's a problem of all countries, the whole issue of waste stream management. Are we using materials that are very hard on the environment down the road? Are we using plastic unnecessarily? And we have to use fossil fuels and petroleum to make that plastic. Are we recycling enough? All right. Sometimes we buy inexpensive products and we have to constantly replace those inexpensive products because they break down. But if we insisted on higher quality products in the first place, it may be a little bit cheaper in the beginning, but you don't have to keep buying replacement items, and you may actually save money down the road You have to think of life cycle cost. You know, how much are you spending for the next 10 years on a particular item? Same thing like buying shoes or buying clothes. If you buy something really inexpensive and it breaks down and you have to buy another pair or something else in a few months from now, are you really saving money? And what is the damage to the environment? Do we recycle our glass? Do we recycle the plastic? When companies make wrapping and packages with kids' toys, are they using too much plastic? And think of the full impact on our environment. I think we have to have that whole life cycle cost as we look at all activities that we do. Another question on the internet.
We're from Rido Dopliat, who wants to know, hello, Mr. Locke, welcome to Indonesia. His question is, what is your biggest task as Secretary of Commerce in the U.S. today?
Biggest task as Secretary of Commerce is that we need to help American companies be more innovative at home, and then we need to help them be more competitive as they try to sell their products and services around the world. We may have great technology, great products in great demand and highly desired around the world, but if it costs too much money, then who's going to buy it? So we need to help them constantly reduce their costs and also inform the world of the great products and services that American companies have that can help people all around the world improve their quality of life, raise their standard of living, and enjoy prosperity. That could be medicine. It could be medical equipment to fight breast cancer. It could be technology to clean up rivers and streams and eliminate pollution from our air. It could be food and crops to help feed the world. And it could be clean energy to make sure that the oceans don't rise, that we don't have more floods, that we don't have more droughts that will devastate our planet in the years to come. Another question or comment? Let's see. Yes, over there.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Bambang Dwi Putra. I'm from Faculty of Medicine, University of Indonesia. Actually, Indonesia is endowed with indigenous energy resources such as natural gas, coal, oil, and is self-sufficient in terms of natural gas, except oils. But lately, Indonesia is at a turning point from oil exporter to become a net oil importer. And due to this problem, actually Indonesia would be required to create an attractive conditions to get a domestic or foreign investment. In your opinion, what kind of attractive conditions that Indonesia could offer to other countries in terms of implementing a clean energy mechanism in Indonesia? Thank you very much.
Well, those are the policies that your government is trying to develop right now, policies in terms of the rates that you charge for electricity or energy, so that if you don't charge enough for electricity, then why would you spend the money on renewable energy? And can you have investors from overseas investors get reimbursed or get a return on their investment? So you have to look at that very, very carefully. You're right. Indonesia used to be an exporter of, for instance, oil, and now you use so much that you're not even part of OPEC anymore because you're using all the oil that you now produce. That's why it's so important to start focusing on clean energy. And you also have produced a lot of coal, but that coal is dirty. And when you burn that coal to make electricity, it really is hurting the environment, as well as the health and the air pollution, and affects the air quality of the people of Indonesia. So then you need to focus on clean coal, or developing gas from coal. And that's why I think the governments and the private sector need to look at partnerships with other countries and the technology of other countries so that you can try to deploy and move to clean energy as quickly as possible. And it's not going to be cheap right now initially, but over time the cost will go down. So we need to think long term, because if we don't address climate change, it's going to cost the government and the people of Indonesia a lot more money when you try to build dikes and dams to keep the oceans from flooding your islands. It's going to cost you a lot more money if the temperatures keep going up and you actually have less rain and you don't have drinking water for the people of Indonesia. That same thing is going to happen in the United States. It's not just Asia, but it's all around the world, and all governments are going to have to spend a lot more billions and billions of dollars trying to cope and mitigate against the effects of climate change. Any other questions? Yes?
My name is Hari from Chemical Engineering University of Indonesia. Talking about applying the clean energy technology, it's related about the culture of Indonesian people. So what I want to ask here is how to make Indonesian people aware to use the clean technology, because we know that the conventional one is still subsidized by the government. So what kind of, maybe from the government or from all stakeholders in energy sectors to overcome this problem? Thank you.
Well, because you do subsidize, for instance, petroleum, and that keeps the prices of petroleum and certain sources of energy artificially low, the cost of renewable energy is not subsidized, and therefore it's higher. And so there's a reluctance to deploy that new technology. Even in the United States, we need to get away from those subsidies of fossil fuels. If we want to encourage alternative energy, we cannot continue to subsidize and promote fossil fuels, because that creates unfair competition with the new technologies that we need. So that's one thing. The second thing is that the public has to demand alternative energy and renewable energy. Many states in America, the people have actually voted to require their utilities and their governments to have policies that will require more renewable energy as a source of their energy. And a lot of states and a lot of the people have voted and required the utilities to get more and more of their electricity from wind and solar and biomass, and not just from coal or natural gas or oil. So this has been driven by the people. The people are demanding this all across the United States. And that's where you can come into. And that's where the people of Indonesia, you control your destiny, you control your future. You're one of the largest democracies in the world. And so we're also counting on your ideas as scientists and researchers and students to help lead the way. Another questioner. Okay. Yes, sir, right there.
Good morning, sir. My name is Raja from Mechanical Engineering. I want to know how the United States government persuade other country which has different ideology with your country, and to cooperate with the United States government and solve this energy problem. Because I think they have their own policy on this problem, sir. Thank you.
Well, each country is going to be different, and each country has to come up with policies that reflect the unique characteristics of that country. Because in Indonesia to France or Germany or Russia or Canada, each country has different types of available energy supply. In Canada, a lot of it is hydropower, and other countries have a lot of coal. And so they need, and Europe uses a lot of nuclear power. So the policies that will work in the United States may not necessarily work in other countries, and the policies that would be ideal for Indonesia may be very different from the policies needed and that would work in other countries. But the challenge that is common is that all countries need to address climate change. All countries need to have more renewable energy. And you need to develop your own policies that provide those incentives. We in the United States have a lot of work to do. Americans produce more greenhouse gases per person than any other country in the world. China, with 4 times the population, produces more greenhouse gases than any country in the world. We know that the developing countries have unique challenges and have to supply energy for its people, and the advanced economies, having been built up on the use of fossil fuels, now have a responsibility to help the other countries meet the challenge. So, but the thing is, what's great is that the countries of the world came together in Copenhagen and agreed to some very ambitious targets. Now it's up to every country to focus on how they will achieve those targets. Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, sir. My name is Maria. I'm from Chemical Engineering University of Indonesia. I have 2 questions, though. The first is, talking about the technology, I would like to ask about nuclear energy. Because I think Indonesia is still thinking that nuclear energy is a scaring thing or something like that. So can nuclear energy be developed in Indonesia? And the second is just like a comment. I would like to say that a nation's prosperity is not just determined by one part of people. I mean, let's say educational people. But nation's prosperity is also determined by the whole citizens, also the uneducational people. So it's like the very hard homework we have to do to overcome that.
You're absolutely right. Trying to change values and ideas and misperceptions and getting the truth and the facts and the figures and the science out is very, very difficult. And that's why we need to have a constant focus on education. Education is lifelong, and we need to encourage everyone to continue to learn, and we need to make it easy for people to learn, whether learning over television, television programs, education programs over television, over the internet, over radio, education never stops, no matter how old you are, and it begins from the time of birth. You don't wait until it's time to go to school before until you learn. The same thing on nuclear power. There are a lot of countries all around the world where the people have some concerns about nuclear power, including the people in the United States. And we're just going to have to keep focusing on that. And how much nuclear power Indonesia will develop is up to the people and the government of Indonesia. It's not for the United States or another country to say that every country should produce a certain percentage of its power from nuclear sources. And it all depends on, for instance, how do you dispose of the nuclear waste. So, nonetheless, what's important is that the people start discussing these issues. Do you want solar? Do you want wind power? Do you want electricity from the currents and the wave and the tides of the oceans? And what might work in Indonesia may not work in another country. What works in the United States may not work in Indonesia. So it's really a decision of the people. But we need to all be committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions that come from coal and other fossil fuels. Question back there, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Ryan. I want to ask you your opinion about how and when the right time to Indonesia to starting change from the conventional energy to clean energy.
Right now. Can never be too late. Start right now. All right. Start right now. Another question on the internet. Yeah.
Geek Cullen from Twitter. She wants to know what's the most difficult obstacle to launching clean energy by American companies, and what Obama's opinion is about this.
What's the most difficult part of launching clean energy among American companies? It's going to require a change in investment, a change in practices. But there is a lot of interest by American companies to start doing R&D in clean energy and start producing equipment, technology for clean energy. But the problem is that we don't have a clear policy from the United States government. Why would a company start developing technology A on clean energy if a year from now or 2 years from now the United States Congress passes a law that says we support technology B over here? And so companies will have spent all this money and scientific time and energy on developing technology A when the United States Congress says we actually prefer technology B. So everybody's waiting for that signal of certainty, predictability from the United States Congress for energy policy. All right. Another question or comment? Let's see. I need to have someone in the back. Yes, right there.
Hello, sir. My name is Karin from Chemical Engineering University of Indonesia. I want to ask you about why does U.S. government choose Indonesia as one of the developing countries to cooperate in clean energy development program?
Well, why do we include Indonesia on our stop? Number one, you're one of the fourth largest democracies in the world, and of course, President Obama is coming in just about 2.5 weeks, and he has a deep interest in the people, the culture of Indonesia, having grown up here as a boy for a few years. And we know that your government has set very ambitious goals on clean energy. So we think this is a perfect time for our two great countries to come together and develop partnerships on clean energy. Because if you are able to succeed in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, then the entire planet and all the people of the world benefit. And by focusing on clean energy, you can start creating thousands of new jobs, good-paying jobs. For instance, as I said earlier, we can meet a lot of the energy demands of the world and of Indonesia by focusing on energy efficiency. Energy efficiency. We know that you use a lot of electricity on air conditioners, but if our buildings were better insulated, better insulated, then with the warm temperatures that you have, you won't need as much air conditioning because insulation keeps the inside of the buildings cooler. You can look at different, and installing installation on new construction, or even looking at older buildings and putting in insulation in the roofs, in the walls, that creates jobs for the people of Indonesia. That's a lot of jobs. And as you build new buildings, looking at different types of materials and making those materials here, that creates jobs. Building wind turbines, wind farms, building electrical plants, generating plants, use their solar cells. That creates jobs for the people of Indonesia. So those are the type of win-win scenarios that President Obama very much believes in. Benefits to the people of Indonesia as well as benefits to the people of America. Another question. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Johar from Faculty of Economics. If we are talking about green technology transfer, and do you think that conventional north to south mechanism is something relevant? And if it is not, and is there any better proposal for this? Thank you.
Well, technology transfer is of major concern for all the Western countries and developed countries to make sure that that there are protections for our intellectual property. I mean, if you're a scientist or a researcher and you come up with a great invention, a great idea, and let's say you gave up your job and you started working on an invention in your home, your own private office for maybe a year, and took out all the money from your bank and put all this money into developing a new technology, and then you got a patent on it, and you started to sell it around Indonesia or around Asia, and then suddenly someone else takes your idea and builds a new factory and steals your idea and starts selling it at a cheaper price. You would be very upset. You'd be very upset if someone stole or counterfeited your product, your service, your idea, and sold it. Because you spent all your time and energy developing it, and someone else just stole it and is now producing it and making money. That's why you have to have intellectual property rights protection, so that you can have a court system that says, no, you developed it, you own it, and if someone wants to use it, they got to pay you for it. All right? So you have to have intellectual property rights protections. You have to have a strong legal system that will enforce your rights. Because why would you want to innovate and create and invent if someone else can just steal your ideas and your products and your technology? So if we want U.S. companies or other countries to come in with and share their technology, we need to know that there's a strong court system here and strong protections of intellectual property rights. And you're going to want the same thing, too, as you begin to invent and as you begin to innovate. Another question or comment? Yes, sir, right there in the...
Thank you. My name is Raka from Mechanical Engineering, University of Indonesia. I'd like to ask about the nuclear. After we could make sure the people in Indonesia with the nuclear, we have to make sure that what about the nuclear program that developed in our country. That nuclear make us scary about we develop it for military. That what kind of fact we could provide the world that our nuclear program is pure for power plant. And the second question is, you said that the clean energy must be, we develop it now. What kind of the cleaner energy? I think there is no clean energy, but the cleaner energy. What kind of that? Is it gasification or geothermal like that? Thank you.
No, you're right. On the issue of nuclear power, that's something that every country has to determine for itself. And the people and the policymakers have to think out all these issues. And so, again, that's an individual decision of every country. We can't, even President Obama's call for nuclear power, some people don't like it in the United States, other people do. It is controversial, and we in the United States believe that it has to be part of our energy mix and part of the energy that we produce. It's not the complete answer. Right? But there are many questions that have to be addressed, many issues that must be solved, whether it's keeping the nuclear waste out of the environment, to making sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands, et cetera, et cetera. And then we do know that, when you even make a solar cell, you're using energy to produce a solar cell. There are always trade-offs, and there is no perfect clean energy. Trying to harness the energy from the sun, you still have to use chemicals and make things and use energy to capture that. The question is, which is more beneficial to the environment? Which technology will reduce our emission of greenhouse gases the best? Because if we continue to produce greenhouse gas emissions, we're all going to suffer the consequences. Another question or comment? Yes, right here.
Morning. My name is Rizky from Chemical Engineering Department, University of Indonesia. I think one of the biggest energy demand is industrial energy. First question is, how many percent in USA itself industrial energy has been fulfilled from clean energy? And the second is, if you are the president of Republic Indonesia, is there any rigid policy to force the industry to substitute the coal to clean energy? Thank you.
Well, I can't tell you what percentage of energy in the United States comes from clean energy. That's really probably our Secretary of Energy, Stephen Chu, who's a Nobel laureate. He can probably answer that. But I do believe that, for instance, in my state of Washington, the majority of the power coming from electricity is generated using hydropower. We have almost no nuclear power, just very, very little. And we have no solar. We do have some wind. My state of Washington used to have the biggest wind farm in the United States up until a few years ago. Now everybody's building wind farms and they're so much bigger. But we have no solar. We have some wind. We have very little coal and mostly hydropower. So, and each state differs. Each state differs. But we need to develop an energy policy in the United States so that we can all produce electricity in one state, let's say using solar, and then have efficient transmission lines that move that electricity to other parts of the country. Now, with all the islands that you have here in Indonesia, your energy policy may have to be different because you're going to have perhaps smaller projects so that you can have it supplied and easily constructed in the thousands of islands that you have. So I cannot profess, and I'm not going to try and say that this is the energy policy of Indonesia. It should be this or that, because I don't know Indonesia the way you know Indonesia and the people of Indonesia know your own country. So you need to resolve that, but you need to make sure that you're still pushing for policies that, for instance, the way to help really create incentives for the development of clean energy is to take away some of the advantages, like the subsidies for dirty energy. Another question or comment? Yes, right there, ma'am.
My name is Ayuko. I'm from Chemical Engineering, University of Indonesia. My question is, in your opinion, what barriers could be appear forward in this clean energy development globally, especially in Indonesia, and how far these barriers could affect to the implementation of the technology? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Can you say it one more time?
In your opinion, what kind of barrier could be appear forward globally, especially in Indonesia, that could affect the implementation of the new technology of the clean energy? Thank you.
What are some of the barriers for the deployment or the implementation of clean energy policies? I think it's the subsidies that even, not just in Indonesia, but even in the United States, we have subsidies that favor and give a cost break to oil-based production of electricity. We subsidize the cost of petroleum, so that petroleum is artificially low. And so if it's artificially low, then why would you build new power plants using solar or wind or even tidal waves? Not tidal waves, but the waves of the oceans. So I think we need to, those are, I think, some of the policies right now from decades and decades and decades ago that favor the traditional production of electricity and energy are the inhibitors to new energy. Another question or comment? Yes.
Good morning, sir. My name is Aprios from Mechanical Engineering. If you talk about clean energy, besides talk about hydropower plant energy, besides talk about wind energy, electricity, we can also talk about green building, sir. Like you said before, by using green building, by using the insulation in the wall, it can keep the building cooler inside. My question is, how about the implementation in your country? I just want to know the number. How many percent in your country, as far as you know? Thank you, sir.
Well, I don't know how many people are involved in the clean energy field, but I know that more and more engineers, structural engineers, architects, are looking at building or designing structures that incorporate clean energy and energy efficiency. Even the Empire State Building spent millions of dollars completely refurbishing the inside of the Empire State Building to become more energy efficient. And the benefits and the cost savings will cover the cost of all that repair and renovation in just a few short years. That's the potential cost savings of energy efficiency. And it more than pays for itself in just a very short period of time. And several of the companies that we brought on our trade mission focus on sustainable design and create a lot of good paying jobs. But it's really just a mindset, because as you start designing a home, designing a warehouse, a factory, how do you design it in a way that reduces the need for energy in the heating and the cooling of that? How can you, for instance, use gas turbines, small, advanced technology, highly advanced technological micro turbines that might produce heat the water or whatever, the steam that you need to run the facility, and then use some of the heat to heat the building in the wintertime. Now, you don't have that problem here in Indonesia, but maybe you use that to produce electricity at the same time so that you can power your air conditioners instead of just letting the heat from some of these engines go up in the air. So, another question or comment? Yeah. Over here. Yes.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, everybody. My name is Erika from Chemical Engineering. Today I want to ask about carbon trading, because nowadays there are many countries in the world are discussing about carbon trading. And what do you think and respond about that? And can we classify a carbon trading into one technology of clean energy? And my last question is, how clean energy affect the economic factor in USA? Maybe especially in the gross national product. Thank you.
Well, I can't give you all those figures. You've asked a lot, but clearly carbon trading is important because we need to let the market decide this. And if you put a price on carbon, whether it's cap and trade or just a price on carbon, that provides the incentives for people to start developing new technologies. Because carbon trading or a price on carbon means that you have to calculate that cost in what you're doing now. And if you, let's say, through a cap and trade system, if you produce too much right now, then you might want to reduce your output of carbon by an offset, by providing money. It's almost like purchasing carbon credits from another industry. And if you're paying another industry to get those carbon credits, you're putting money into that other sector, and that other sector will grow. And that provides an incentive for the development of other technologies or measures. It's investing in measures like planting trees that can reduce the carbon impact of your particular industry. So that is using the market forces to really accelerate change in behavior as well as development of new technologies. And so we need to let the market move in this area, but they will not move if you don't remove some of the subsidies, if you don't set limits on carbon, or whether it's by a price on carbon or a cap and trade and other mechanisms. So we need the private sector to really help provide those incentives and make changes in behavior. Any other questions or comments up here? Let me see. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Ryan from Chemical Engineering University of Indonesia. My question is, what kind of clean energy technologies that exist and has been developing in USA? Thank you very much.
What technologies have not been developed?
Technologies, clean energy technologies that exist and has been developing in USA.
That have been developed?
Yes. Yes.
Well, we're actually working on a whole host of technologies. We're working on developing energy from algae, We're focusing on waste to energy, from landfills and burning garbage and developing energy from that. We're looking at developing energy from using the currents, the tides of the oceans as they go back and forth. That will develop energy, and a lot of projects in that. A lot of projects on wind, a lot of projects on solar, geothermal, capturing the carbon from coal plants. We call it carbon capture sequestration, and taking those greenhouse gas emissions and pumping it into the earth instead of it going into the atmosphere, and then also producing gas from coal. And then, of course, just clean coal technology as well. So there's a whole host of technologies, and you, the scientists and engineers, probably know more about this than I do. Great. Another question or comment? Let me see. I have a part of the room that I haven't taken from before. Gentleman in the back, right there.
Thank you. My name is Hilman from Chemical Engineering Department. As we know that the clean energy technology is still expensive and their product is still not competitive with the fossil fuel energy. In your opinion, what solutions that you can offer to face this problem?
Well, that's why we need, as I said, we need to take away some of those incentives and subsidies for fossil fuels. And of course, price of oil keeps changing all the time. And so that's why, we need to move forward. And the more clean energy we bring to scale, the more clean energy projects there are, the cost will go down. The more you produce, the cheaper it becomes over time. And of course, the more we keep perfecting this, and the more solar cells that the world produces, then the cost of solar cells will start dropping down. So just like automobiles used to be super, super, super expensive, or no, DVD players. DVD players used to be so expensive. High-definition television sets used to be so expensive. Now they're much more cheaper because production has gone up. Technology has been perfected. And that's why we need to keep moving forward. It will be more expensive at first. That's why government support grants on the R&D will hasten this, and grants for manufacturing and support incentives for manufacturing will help reduce that initial extra cost of a lot of this technology until it becomes commonplace. Another question or comment? Yeah.
My name is Friska from Chemical Engineering Department. In your opinion, how can Indonesia start a transition to use clean energy? Maybe the first step to do for the government and the citizens. And the next question for the U.S. government. For the U.S. government, what kind of collaboration that you expect from Indonesia in the development of clean energy? Thank you.
Well, I don't know enough about Indonesia's clean energy policy to say which you should pursue first, because you have a whole host of strategies in all different areas. More geothermal, you're looking at clean coal, you're looking at more wind, you're looking at solar, and especially on the forestation and trying to reduce the dehydration of your peat. That's where that whole process right now is produces so much of your greenhouse gases, and I know that your government is focusing on that area as a key strategy. So you have the right policies, or you have at least the right goals. You've identified the areas that you want to work on. Now it's really, I think, the challenge is to mobilize the private and public sectors to start getting an action plan together. And that's where the U.S. companies can form that partnership, whether it's geothermal, whether it's energy efficiency, and all these things. And we have so many different companies that have different specialties that can help different sectors of the Indonesian clean energy sectors move forward. Yes, right here.
Thank you, Secretary Locke. Since we are talking here in the campus, I think we also better to talk about possible collaboration between the faculties, researchers, exchange students, etc. So what can you offer for us to work closer with the United States? Thank you.
Well, here at the University of Indonesia, you have such great partnerships with other colleges, universities all around the world. And I would hope that your engineering and science disciplines would start looking at collaborations with counterparts all around the world, whether it's Europe, other parts of Asia, and clearly the United States, especially in the field of clean energy. The partnership agreement that the President hopes to sign with Indonesia in a few weeks would call for greater cooperation in education and R&D and research and scientific endeavors. And clearly, given the big interest that the President has in trying to help Indonesia meet your ambitious energy reduction, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and carbon reduction goals, I think this would be a perfect topic of that collaboration. Great. Another question? Oh, internet.
Here on Twitter from Gian Carr, he asks, will the U.S. provide fast start climate financing for Indonesia? If so, how much? And notes the UK has agreed to provide Indonesia £50 million.
I don't know what the figure might be and how the President plans to address that. And so I do know that there are grants available, for instance, from some of our government agencies to help Indonesian companies finance the purchase of technology from the United States and on very, very favorable terms so that Indonesian companies that are interested in that technology, if they can't find the funds through traditional sources, would be able to use some of the government mechanisms that we have. So that's one thing to explore. Right. Another question or comment? Yes.
Thank you. I am Aditya from Chemical Engineering University of Indonesia. From your point of view, actually, how long the target of this plan can be reached? I mean, the whole country in the world can be applied that clean energy technology. So it can be the conclusion from this presentation. Thank you.
Well, how do we achieve some of these targets? Each country is setting different targets, let's say by 2020, or even your country, some things by 2025, and then even more aggressive targets by the year 2050. Because we know that it's not going to be easy at first to make these changes, but once you start making these changes, then it'll be rolling much faster and gaining a lot of momentum. It's always the first couple of years that it's going to be very, very tough. It's always going to be change at the beginning is always tough, but once it's in place, then it can start moving more rapidly, and you see the benefits of it. It'll take a while, for instance, to develop more geothermal, but once you have that technology in place, it'll be much easier, and you can deploy it much faster. That's why all the countries have different targets, let's say for 2020 to 2025, but then by 2050, substantial reductions of greenhouse gas emissions from, let's say, their 2000 or 2005 levels. Another question or comment? Yes.
Good morning, sir. I want to know what is the more focused clean energy technology in United States. The second, I want to know.
Sorry, what was that question?
The more focused clean energy technology in United States. Okay. And the second, I want to know that what the United States wants from Indonesia to do, or maybe just to participate, or what? Thank you.
Well, I think most of our focus in the United States is on wind and solar as alternative energy. Wind and solar and energy efficiency. Again, we can achieve 50% meet 50% of the future energy demands by focusing on more efficiency of the existing systems, so that you don't have to build as many new power plants. Because as one of the other persons remarked, even if you build clean energy, it still has an environmental impact. There's no such thing as perfectly clean energy. It may be cleaner. And so the more that we can focus on energy efficiency, the less we have to build by way of power plants. And we can take, because government money and private sector money is limited, and if we can reduce the number of power plants that we need to build, we still will need some, then that freed up money, that saved money, can be used for other social purposes and other projects. So that's what we're focusing on the most. All right. Another question or comment? Yes, Doctor.
I'm Ratna from Faculty of Medicine. I would like to ask you one question. We understand that human body may help our daily activity problems, and our cell produce energy, clean energy, by mitochondria. Do you have any research institute in which collaboration between medicine and technology can overcome the problem in energy producing, I mean?
Oh, wow, that's a great one. I'm not aware of any projects right now focusing on the medical aspects of and collaboration on the effects of the body and how the body may adapt But clearly we know that as the temperatures rise, the bodies are going to have to adapt, and there could be more disease because more droughts, more bugs, infestation of our forests, because in many parts of the world we need very, very cold weather to kill the bugs and the larvae of insects in our trees. And if the planet temperature goes up just a few centigrade, a couple degrees centigrade, then many of those forests will not have the cold temperatures that they need to kill off some of these, and then we're going to have more disease in forests as well, and trees dying, and that will then reduce their ability to capture carbon. So then the whole impact on the earth is exacerbated and increased. But clearly we do need more research in how the body may be impacted from rising temperatures and climate change. But you know, if there's one energy that is clean, that is unlimited, it's our human energy, and it's our human capital, and our ability to think and innovate. And that's what we need to make sure that we have policies in place that constantly promote education, critical thinking in our education systems, and funding for research and development and scientific discovery. That's where all of you come in. That's where all of you come in. We need you, because the ideas and the technologies that we're all talking about today, or that we're going to be using in the next few years, may not be enough. And some of the great breakthroughs that we will need to solve this problem of climate change and to be more energy independent and to have more renewable energy may not yet have been invented yet or perfected yet. That's where you all come in. That's where you all come in. We are depending on you to save the planet from irreversible climate change. One last question, and we'll stop. All right, let me see, who do we got? Oh, I saw one hand over here.
My name is, morning sir, my name is Rizka from Chemical Engineering. I have two questions. The first question is...
I'll give you one question.
Oh, one question. Okay, as we know, in Copenhagen, the America didn't sign the treatment. What is your opinion about it?
Well, I'm very pleased that we were able in Copenhagen to have the countries come together and sign agreements and establish targets. Now, Copenhagen does not have a way of enforcing it or forcing the countries to comply. But what is good is that Copenhagen was that important step of getting countries to agree that this is a major problem and that the countries will set their targets. And then many countries, while they did not want to be bound by it, did not want to be forced to meet their targets and objectives, many of those countries will probably exceed their targets. They just didn't want to be forced to do it. And although there's still discussion about how to make that permanent and enforceable, nonetheless, I'm very, very encouraged. It's a first step. Then we have to all go back to our own countries and make sure that we have government policies and support of the people and changes of behavior at all levels of private sector, nonprofit sector, government sector to move forward. I only gave you one question because instead of two, so you're sharing your question with that lady over there. All right, you have the very last.
Yeah, thank you for this last opportunity that I can ask the question for you. Well, I want to ask, let's say in 2030, what do you see this planet can be if the whole country in this world is contributing in this clean energy technology? And what about the oil and gas field that already been developed in all over the country? Do we need to close the oil and gas field and petroleum field? And do we can we say that we don't need the hydrocarbon energy anymore? Thank you.
Well, I probably should have let him ask two questions because your question is too complicated and too tough to answer. But I can't predict the future, whether it's 2013 or 2030. What I do believe is that the technology is going to keep growing, and you're going to see more of it being developed faster and faster, and the technology will be cheaper in price. It's going to be even better every single year. But that also means that we need to adopt the very, very best technology. We need to adopt the very best technology. We should not settle for second best. because the technology, even though it will come down in price, is still expensive. And it's going to be even more expensive if you're constantly having to replace the technology, the equipment, and trying some totally different thing. So we really need to continue have that government policy that supports renewable energy, reduction of hydrocarbons, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and encourage everybody from all ages to support this challenge, to take up the challenge, to answer the challenge, to take up the challenge of preventing irreversible climate change. If we do nothing, if we don't do enough, the oceans will rise, the weather will change so dramatically that will actually affect our health, our daily lives, the quality of life for our children and our grandchildren, and it will cost all of us, from government to private sector, so much money to cope with the disastrous effects of climate change. It's actually cheaper for us and wiser for us to tackle it as soon as we can, starting today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary Gary Locke. Due to the limited time, it is unfortunate that we will have to stop here. We will now continue with exchange of tokens.
Now I'd like to present the rector with a gift from the Department of Commerce. All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for hosting me. You got great students here. Terrific, terrific students, and we're looking to their creativity and their ingenuity and their innovations to solve the problems of climate change.
May the tokens exchange be a reminder of the insightful discussion and the exchange of knowledge that took place today.
Thank you very much, and I understand a lot of you have exams and things like that, so good luck in your exams, all right? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Gary Locke, will have to proceed to other engagements. Once again, let us give a warm applause for Mr. Secretary Gary Locke. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's lecture and discussion. Thank you very much for your insightful questions and comments. May the discussion that we have today provide fruitful insights that will benefit us all. Thank you and good afternoon.